technology changing. You cannot ignore the fact that you should have entrepreneurship inside of a corporation, which means that ideas that come along, use them. Don't ignore them. Put some money into them, fund them, and so forth. Look at your employees that have ideas. Ask for the ideas. Be creative enough to say, you know what? Let me have a think tank inside the corporation. What are we doing wrong? What are we doing that doesn't make any sense?
Hello, everyone. Hello and welcome. I know I say it all the time. It's your favorite time of the week, but it is your favorite time of the week, and it's my favorite time of the week. It's time for Leaders Talk Season 2 as usual. I am your host, Andrew Duthie, and today I have with me a very special guest. It is Darius Ross. So I'm going to let Darius introduce himself for a second, but Darius is somebody who absolutely redefines the concept of taking it from zero all the way to CEO with a little bit of hustle and with a lot of arts of the deal. He has risen himself up to his position from scratch, and he's going to share with us some of his ideas and of course, about his participation in Leadership DNA and why he wrote in that. And yeah, Darius, welcome. I'm just going to actually let you kind of introduce yourself to the audience. I know you've got a lot of interesting stories, so take it away, sir.
I'm Darius Ross. I am the epitome of the urban guerrilla CEO.
Here we go. Yeah.
The hustler of hustlers. You know, we invented the concept of, you got to grind. I came from Chicago. So, this is a place where it's the town of the Al Capones, and it's the town of all the unique characters that in the history of Chicago that created everything from Chicago's political scene to and including the Chicago's urban crime era and so forth. So from that, I learned a lot of lessons from how to actually achieve, sustain, and maintain all different types of corporate, political, and so forth. So I became the epitome of the urban hustler, understanding how to navigate the waters and be able to sustain and achieve great wealth and or success. So interesting stories.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I mean, yeah, to just kind of give us a little bit of an idea of what that even really means, because some will say, well, I mean, how do I become a guerrilla in business and build something like that up? So, I mean, just walk us through what exactly it takes to do what you're doing.
Mr. Trump had the art of the deal when he made the book about the art of the deal, but the only difference of it was that book did not define what happens in urban America. And as a result, it doesn't really relate to how you actually have to be successful when everything is against you. The odds are against you, and how you have to understand and define there's a gray zone. There's a gray zone, and then there's a no-go zone. And then there's a no-go zone, and then there's a zone that, okay, anything goes in. And you have to be able to understand how that all works. And in navigating in that, there are no rules necessarily. You adapt them along the way, and you create your own rules. Sometimes the rules are ethical, sometimes the rules are unethical. But you have to be able to position yourself accordingly. And from my vantage point, a lot of things that you did and you would do are completely different than what would make sense. And, thank God that I, were able to survive that and actually achieve those things, but navigate in a place where there were no rules. For example, I remember one story of me working in a retail store at the time. And in working the retail store, I sat down and, the mannequin had all these great clothes on. And I'm thinking to myself, now the mannequin has great clothes on. Now, what about this mannequin? And I'm selling these clothes. What about me putting the mannequin's clothes on and me selling versus the mannequin? So I switched clothes, put the mannequin's clothes on me, and I put my clothes on the mannequin. First week, I sold $20,000 worth of female shoes. First week. Because the women look at me like, oh, wow, he's handsome, he's looking good. But I'm like, I got the mannequin's clothes on. We just fit each other. So it's a perfect deal. Now, in the meantime, I got a guy that comes to me and he's like, I'm in perfume and I'm selling in perfumes. He's like, well, can you come in here and sell? So I spray the cologne on me and I'm like, hey, we're in business now. Same thing with the shoe guy. So before I knew it, I'm in the store, and this is a high-end store like the Magnums type. And before I knew it, I'm actually selling, the shoes and everything. So what do? Put the mannequin shoes on. Mannequin shoes are on me. I'm wearing the mannequin shoes. Cole Haan, Figuramo, I've got Ferragamo and so forth on. So all of a sudden, I am the epitome of being creative.
Yeah. So I mean, you're basically showing, or selling by showing, or walking the mile in the shoes to actually get the experience to be able to relate to a customer.
Absolutely. And in that particular instance, the bottom line was being able to basically say to folks, listen, I am selling the stuff that needs to be sold, and the bottom line of it is I'm able to sell these things in such a way because I'm looking to park. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
working out in a place called Northbrook, and this place is multimillionaires. So in order to sell the product, you got to look like people that you're selling it to. So my idea was, like I said, now what if I'm able to? I mean, I got a regular shirt and tie on. I'm not looking the part. All of a sudden now I look the part because now I've got everything on that fits the bill. So this is
Yeah.
what I mean when I say about skirting the rules. You know, nobody told me, well, what do you do? It's like, you got to be creative. So I was creative. Didn't know I was being creative, but I'm like, you know what? We're going to try this. And all of a sudden, every single week when the mannequin got dressed up, the mannequin got to change the clothes and I got the new clothes. So this is what happened.
Well, how do you apply this kind of methodology to larger business? Because I mean, we can see this in something direct customer facing. I can definitely see exactly how that works. But when you're starting to move up the ladder and become, let's say you go into management and then you go into upper management and then finally, you're in C-suite executive management. How do those kind of methodologies apply to those?
Another example is that is we'll look at Amazon and Sears. All Amazon is an electronic mail order. Let us not forget that.
Right.
Sears was the epitome of mail order. I remember working for Sears as catalog sales. And Sears had the ability to buy Amazon before Mr. Bezos became famous, but they didn't make a good decision. Their decision was, well, what can he do? Well, that's the problem. They didn't look at the turning of the wheel. Technology was changing. People's taste buds were changing. Young people were starting to get the groove of this. Then older people started to get the groove of being ordered online. So as a result, this wonderful thing called the telephone became one of the greatest things in mankind. Because I remember in 1983 having the first cell phone that First Chicago was inventing with Motorola. Now, this thing was a brick phone, right? Nobody wanted this thing, it was too big. All of a sudden, they came up with a flip phone and on and on and on. So Sears had the epitome to be right on the cutting edge of that, but they ignored it. Another example of that is Microsoft. Microsoft came about because IBM had this wonderful thing called the software, this interface. They had it, they ignored it. Bottom line again is you cannot ignore the signs of technology changing. You cannot ignore the fact that you should have entrepreneurship inside of a corporation, which means that ideas that come along, use them. Don't ignore them. Put some money into them, fund them, and so forth. Look at your employees that have ideas. Ask for the ideas. Be creative enough to say, you know what? Let me have a think tank inside the corporation. What are we doing wrong? What are we doing that doesn't make any sense? Who's out
Yeah.
there that's prepared to eat our lunch? And before they eat our lunch, we better turn around and cannibalize it, because that's what Amazon did. Amazon cannibalized the industry. They even forced Walmart to change their mythology.
Yeah. But then you have the situation where the guerrilla companies like Amazon and Microsoft, and I mean to an extent Apple, when they were coming out, they got to the point where they were big. They got to the point where now they were the big company that had things and began to do things in a much more stuffy manner and quit and started to stagnate a little bit and didn't really become original. So how do you stay original? How do you reach that point and then not stagnate into the point where then other guerrilla companies are going to come up and start start feeding at your sides and ends? Yeah.
Maintain what I would best call a Silicon Valley in your company. Maintain innovative ideas, maintain a space where you allow young people, you allow ideas to flourish. You actually go out and look for new technologies. You go out and look for new thoughts, new ways of doing things. You just don't turn around and just stay the same. You actually use the guerrilla approach. How do we scale this wall without using a rope? How do we turn around and tunnel in without using a shovel? You have to turn around and constantly keep on innovating and getting those young ideas, getting those young people, looking at what the market is dictating, looking at what people don't see, and finding those people that have those ideas. And particularly speaking, looking at people that have the innovativeness to think out of the box. The company has to be, I guess, venture capital based in the sense that they're willing to look at ideas from a different angle. Not look at it like, okay, well, we're the top of the heap and that's it. No, no, no. Every 20 years, somebody's cannibalizing your company. And it's a decision whether or not you're smart enough to realize I need to turn around and buy them and bring their ideas in, or bring them in and collaborate before they become the new guy on the block and I end up as a dinosaur.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. I mean, that's just it. You don't necessarily view it as competition. You view it as something that's spurring you on and seeing it. This is somebody that you actually may be able to bring in and collaborate with. Yeah, because when you do that kind of thing, you open up new doors and you open up ways in which your company can start to move into different directions that you haven't seen before.
I guess the big thing of it is always remember there's somebody out there like me that's hungry, that
Yeah.
doesn't have lunch, hasn't
I got
eaten
the
in a
eye of the
while. That's right.
tiger.
That's right. Hasn't eaten in a while. Needs
Apollo
some food.
Creed, you got to have the eye, you
That's
rock.
right. That's right. I say this to guys that I coach on an executive basis. I say, you ever watch the Animal Channel, right?
Yeah.
That's one thing, but you need to go out and become a hunter and go out and actually spend time in safaris out in the wilderness and whatever else and just watch animals. If you watch an eagle, right, the eagle sits up on high and he looks down, right? Now, I had never seen this before until I saw this. This eagle actually got this mountain goat. Now, the cool thing about the mountain goat is he's up on the mountain. This eagle's looking at him. He's like, all right, it's going to be dinner time real soon. Patience. He waits until the eagle is at a point where the eagle is like looking down and he sees a mountain goat. He sees a mountain goat about the tip, right? He swoops down. He gets the clutches on him. He takes him up about maybe another 100, 200 feet. Mountain goes out of air. Boom, it's over, right? But the bottom line was he was waiting. He did
Yeah.
not seize him when he knew he could fight. He got him when he was at his weakest point. Moral of the story of it is you've got to take your team outside and look at how animals function. The
Right.
same thing with the tiger or the lion. When the lion's looking at those wildebeest going across that ridge and he's running and they're running and running, you'll see lions running behind him. But all of a sudden, he tries to get the fastest one, right? He realizes, nah, that's not going to work. So he shakes that off. The wildebeest throws him off, right? But then there's one coming along. He's creeping along, just chilling. He got him. All because he didn't turn around and realize you got to run with the pack. If you don't run with the pack, you're going to lose out. Moral of the story again is you got to stay on top because somebody out there is waiting in the wings, lurking, waiting to turn around and cannibalize you.
Yeah.
Very important.
Yeah. No, I mean, absolutely. And we've all been there and seen that. So what's been kind of the driving, just to kind of pivot a little, what's been the driving purpose in you deciding to start writing this down and sharing a lot of this with the world outside of your own circles?
Because I'm seeing how young people, some of them, I'll say it this way, are like me and they're hungry.
Yeah.
But I'm seeing how the world is changing,
Oh,
whereas you're going to have a lot of the have and have nots.
yeah.
But the interesting part about it is the have nots don't really understand how, at the end of the day, they can actually prosper too. They just got to
Right.
figure out the angles. But I'm actually talking to the haves because I'm saying to the haves, listen, okay, there's a way to do this, whereas you don't have to turn around and take advantage of anybody. You don't have to turn around and demean and destroy anybody. The guy that's at the bottom of the totem pole is carrying your bag. You don't have to turn around and beat him up and beat him over the head and take his money and, destroy his manhood or his whole concept. All you really have to do in case in point is just position yourself to say, okay, listen, there's plenty of money out here for all of us. Now, how do we make sure we maintain a set of standards and protocol and get this? And so when I'm talking to our entrepreneurs or to be entrepreneurs to understand, listen, there's opportunity out there. Focus on how to do this with ethics. That's the most important thing, ethically.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's ethics is going to be kind of the one that's a sticking point for some people.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know people directly say I just leave my ethics at the door when I go into business. It's not something that I ever even put a thought into. My morality is very different when it's work than it is when it's in my everyday day-to-day life. So why is, to those that don't think that ethics really belongs too much at work, why is ethics something that they should be embracing?
I actually lived by a code, as I call the code of Bushido, which is the honor code.
Yeah.
And for those of people that don't understand the Middle Eastern and the uh, technologies and the thoughts of the Japanese and martial arts, right? And it has a code of standards, 13 codes that you live by, the things that you don't do, you don't attack, you don't seize the day, you take the moments out and you just peacefully exist. Now, in the art of war with Sun Tzu and Machiavelli and so forth, a lot of us have dealt with that. And I came in the business with the no conscious principle as well. But what I found out is you don't think about the people that are impacted later on. For every
Right.
one job that's lost, 5 other people lose a job. Folks don't understand that. If you're a teacher, for example, and you're putting a kid through college, somebody at the cafeteria at that college loses a job. Someone at the cleaners loses a job, and I can go on and on. the bottom line of it is you have to look at this as who am I impacting, what's going on. And I went at it that way, like, all right, this is Gordon Gekko and the Wall Street principle. Just go in there and just go to town and just, if you close a business down, you close a factory down, whatever, don't care. After you see the impact of that and you see these businesses that close down that you used to go to, then you start realizing the impact of it. So there's a way to do this thing and everybody can flourish. You have to understand that the impact that you have, you're affecting people's meal sets. And when I say meal sets, that means their housing, that means their food, that means the basic Maslow hierarchy, food, shelter, and so forth. You're affecting them. So why turn around and upset the entire apple cart just because you want to make some money? Do you need $400 million? Do you need 12 jets? Do you need a 40,000 square foot house necessarily? I'm not hating on people that have it. I've been there, done.
Right. No, yeah. It's just, how much of that is actually something you 100% need to have, and where can you make efforts in which you're going to help the maximum number of people, which, we'll get into that in just a second. It can be very beneficial in and of itself in ways for your business that you don't necessarily see.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And that's the key, to be able to realize that you don't have to do it that way. And that's what people lose track of things, that they don't have to turn around and commit atrocities unnecessarily.
Yeah. And that's kind of get into that when you actually look at what happens when you are more egalitarian in your approach to things, and you're looking to actually improve the maximum number of people's lives, including your own workers, which then trickles down to other areas. You can see that that's better overall for your business and for economy, because that creates positivity along with creating more and more and more potential customers, people that have the ability to buy your material.
Absolutely. So it makes a big difference. And so you don't really realize that until you actually find yourself as a CEO, or as, like, I've been in the business, buying business for years. When you're buying these businesses and you find out, okay, I can make efficiency, I can close this business down and have 4 or 5 employees less. Well, that's wonderful, until you realize the impact of what that business has in that community. And I've had to deal with those conversations with those community leaders and realize the impact that you've had in closing down a business or a particular subsidiary. That's the key.
What are some practical things in which business leaders that maybe want to become a little bit more ethical for whatever reason, whether it be PR or whether it be because they do feel like that there's more profit in it, which I think would be something that would be positive. I mean, what do you suggest that they do to immediately have some universal impact on their business right away?
Focus on things like housing.
Okay.
Are your employees able to turn around and function day to day? Rule number 1, can they function day to day? Rule number 2, what about the employees' kids? Do you offer programs that allow for these kids to basically function when the parents get home? I mean, if you have these parents at the job 10, 15 hours a day, are you looking at daycare? Are you looking at the ability for these kids to basically be in a situation where they can see what their parents are doing and so forth? In the local community, are you actually contributing to what goes on in the local community as far as keeping that community safe, keeping that community sound? A lot of times we as executives don't really realize that we have a business in the community. But what can that business do from a safety standpoint, and say to a local alderman or local mayor, listen, all that nonsense is going on here has to stop. You can't have these people leaving my job site, and there is all different types of things going on in the streets, and there's all these problems. You got to deal with that. You have to deal with that, and we have to deal with that as corporate leaders and say, okay, this is a city that has to run a certain way. So we have to lean on these corporate leaders as well as political leaders and say, this can't happen. And that's the key.
Yeah. Yeah. And absolutely, we do have to go all the way up to politics in that, because, they become massively involved in how that works. Well, Darius, as we start to kind of wrap up a little bit here, just to kind of sum everything up and maybe give our audience what I like to call a golden nugget, just something that they could universally use for just about anything in their life or business that relates to what we've been talking about.
I think the number one thing is, if you're going to get into entrepreneurship, understand that you're going to face a lot of obstacles.
Yeah.
And in those obstacles that you face, position yourself to be able to deal with adversity. That's the number one thing. How you deal with adversity, how you accept difficult situations and how you adapt to how you're going to kind of move and groove during that time period, because you've got to be able to have a certain timing, and you have to be able to be smart enough to realize that not all situations are going to be normal. Some things are going to be extremely off the chain and off the charts. How do I deal with that? How do I keep my employees focused? How do I deal with crisis management? How do I keep, if a situation happens in the company, how do I deal with these things? So I would say adversity is the key thing. How do I adapt to situations that are uncomfortable, i.e. the gorilla principle? How do you get here and there's a fight going on and you've got to turn around and win that fight that day? Because every single day, and I adapt this principle, I say, when I walk out the door, who's going to up me today? Okay. And with that in mind, I go into the concept of, is it going to be a customer that's going to come at me wrong? Is it going to be an employee that's going to come at me wrong? How am I going to adjust my temperature to ease the waters and make things cool?
Yeah. Well, great. And that is something that everybody, I think, runs into, and that can be kind of, you're right, it's universally applicable. If you think about that every single day, then you never have any surprises.
And that's it.
Yeah, great. Well, Darius, how can our audience find out more about you?
They can reach me at dariusaross.com. That's DARIUSAROSS.com.
Okay, perfect. And ladies and gentlemen, Darius is going to be featured in Leadership DNA, so go ahead and pick that up. All of those links are going to be down below, so go ahead and click through, get in contact with Darius, and learn a little bit more about that, the guerrilla style of hustle. Darius, we love having you. We're going to probably have you back a little bit later, see how things have gone for you, and get a little update. But until then, we wish you the absolute best of luck in everything you do.
All right. Thank you, sir.